Mr. President, when we began the budget debate in Senator Murray's committee last week, I said that Senator Murray's challenge gave new meaning to the idea of playing a tough hand, and many thought that her task was essentially mission impossible. The fact is, Mr. President, for all of us who know Senator Murray well, she has spent her whole life coming up with solutions to those matters that people said were mission impossible. She's spent her whole life coming up with accomplishments that actually solve problems, and I just want to commend Senator Murray for all of her work on this matter. And I think it's very clear that when we get the kind of bicameral, bipartisan agreement that addresses the major concerns we're debating here on the floor, it is going to be to no small measure because Senator Murray continued to reach out to all sides. I just want her to know how much I appreciate that. Mr. President and colleagues, I think we all understand that these are complicated issues, and at the same time, the challenge of coming up with a bipartisan agreement here is not rocket science in terms of identifying what the issues are. There are two issues here, Mr. President. One of them is taxes, and the other is Medicare. And the two of them, in fact, are inextricably linked in many respects, because I've heard some on the other side of the aisle say, I'll look at ways to reform taxes if colleagues on the Democratic side will look at ways to protect Medicare and at the same time hold down its cost. And we've heard other senators say the reverse. And so these issues are really inextricably linked. And one of the reasons that I support this budget this evening, Mr. President, is that I think this budget provides significant space for Democrats and Republicans as this process goes forward to produce bipartisan solutions on those two issues, the tax question and the Medicare issue, in the days ahead. And let me take just a few minutes. Senator Coates talked about our bipartisan efforts. I've had a chance, really for the last 5 years, to work with two very thoughtful conservative Republicans, Senator Coates and our former colleague, Senator Gregg, and Senator Begich and I have been part of a bipartisan team that is in effect seeking to modernize some of the principles that a very big group of Democrats and Ronald Reagan agreed to in the 80s, which is to clean out some of these outlandish special interest tax breaks. And I see my good friend Senator Levin here tonight, and he is going to outline just some of those outlandish tax breaks. We ought to clean them out and use a portion of those dollars to hold down the rates and keep progressivity. And in the 2 years after Democrats and Republicans did that, in the 80s, the country created millions of new jobs. No one can say that every one of them was due to that tax reform effort, but it certainly helped. And we had Senator Enzi on the floor earlier this evening, and I've been working with her on something that I think really has been missed in the tax reform debate, and that is Senator Enzi has said, when are people going to start talking about the transition rules that you would need to actually implement the tax reform plan? Because today in a global economy, and Senator Murray and I come from a part of the world that's so trade sensitive, here we've got Senator Enzi talking about something very practical that ought to be very attractive to the most progressive member of the Senate and the most conservative member of the Senate. And under the Murray proposal, those are the kinds of ideas we could be looking at in the days ahead. So let me now turn, if I might, to the Medicare issue, Mr. President, which again, we all understand is right at the heart of when Senator Murray and Congressman Ryan and all those who are going to be in a bipartisan conference are negotiating I continue to believe that it is critically important to protect the Medicare guarantee, something I have battled for since the days when I was co-director of the Oregon Gray Panthers, and we can do it in a way that will hold down costs. This is another area where Senator Murray has given us a chance to look at some of the solutions that could win support on both sides of the aisle, and I'll just touch on them briefly. For years now, we have had advocates on all sides of the political spectrum talk about the value of merging Part A, which is the hospital portion of Medicare, with Part B, the doctors and outpatients part of the program. Here's a chance, colleagues, to save billions of dollars while also helping vulnerable seniors hold down some of their out-of-pocket expenses. It is there for the doing. Under the Murray budget, I think we can forge bipartisan support for it. Let me move on now to the question of chronic care. This is where, Mr. President, more than 70% of Medicare costs go for those who are suffering from heart and stroke and cancer and diabetes. Now, the accountable care organizations, which are an important part of the Affordable Care Act, are clearly going to help with respect to how we look to treat this population. But it is not going to lift all the boats, Mr. President, and there are a lot of very effective plans and group practices around the country that are going to give us the opportunity to put in place integrated, effective plans to help the sickest among us. We ought to pursue it. The Murray budget is going to give us that opportunity. And I'll close simply by saying there's some very good ideas for promoting Medicare quality and holding costs down, which cost very little, such as the approach that Senator Grassley has given me the chance to partner with him on, that would open up for the first time the Medicare database so that we would really get a sense of what Medicare was paying various doctors and providers for various services. So I know colleagues are waiting to speak, and I will just wrap up by saying that on the biggest challenges of our time, which I think really come down to two issues, taxes and Medicare, the Murray budget gives us a chance to come together in a bipartisan way. We're not going to get it all done, obviously, this week, but we're going to have a chance to do it, and I think in both of these areas, taxes and Medicare, there are senators on both sides of the aisle who can pick up on this budget and find a way to help Senator Murray and others who are going to participate in these discussions get us to the solutions that we need that will strengthen our economy and protect our people. Mr. President, I yield the floor.